This is Cardinal Martini, not Appletini. You might expect that he'd be Cardinal Appletini. It's Cardinal Martini. And he was, he was the kingmaker. Very influential. He was in Milan, very powerful amongst the Italian bishops, but also throughout Europe. And he's the one who called for women's ordination. He was very critical of the church's teaching on sexuality. He also questioned contraception, the church's teaching on contraception. And I think from a historical point of view, you need to realize that Milan, which is also where Martini came from, that's who became Paul VI. Right. Milan is a banking center, a metropolitan center in Italy, and it's very key when it comes to the financial intersection with the spiritual intersection.
As Francis
I think we're just
says,
now coming to understand that.
As Francis says, everything is connected, right?
Yeah, everything is connected. So, I have all of his positions in front of me, but I don't know if we should go through them. It's pretty much everything that you would assume a liberal cardinal would believe. He did, but he did it back before people were public about it. Pre-Francis days, pre-Benedict days, back when it was controversial, he was being bold and being open to women's ordination and lay ministry and civil unions and female deacons.
Right. Basically,
supported female deacons.
The whole agenda of Francis comes from Martini and the St. Gallen Mafia. Yes. There was one article I wanted to give a shout out. A young lady named Julia Maloney, who's recently written a book on the St. Gallen Mafia, which I've reviewed and had the privilege of endorsing. She wrote an article last month for 1 Peter 5 called "The Weapon of the St. Gallen Mafia is Synodality." Mm-hmm. And this is what she wrote. At the Mafia's January 1999 meeting, according to the authorized biography of member Godfrey Daniels, Martini shared the latest permutation of his dream. And this is a dream basically of the synodal church that he talked about back in the 80s. He said he wanted a new council. It was the deepest dream of a man who would one day tell Aldo Maria Valli, a famous Vatican journalist, that the time of Vatican II had been the greatest period of his life. And as you said earlier, the progressives just never wanted it to end. They wanted it to be perpetual. So she goes on to say, later that year at a synod on Europe, and that was held in October of 1999 under John Paul II, Martini stood up and shared a version of this dream. Invoking Vatican II's memory, he spoke of a future, quote, collegial and authoritative consultation among all the bishops, end quote. Then he listed the key issues to address collegiality, from sexuality to the deficit of ordained ministers, etc., etc. So during that October 1999 address, even though he never used the term council or new council, essentially that's what he's talking about. He's talking about an extension of Vatican II, a de facto Vatican III.
Yeah. Which can perpetuate, because if everybody remember, all the controversy that we've been discussing for the past 3 years has all emerged from the synods.
Right.
The synods are the cauldrons from which all these monsters pop out. All these potions come.
And it's much easier to manipulate a synod than it is an ecumenical council. Think about it. The Pope can hand select who he wants to be in the leadership positions. Yep. He can hand select which bishops throughout the world, for the most part, are going to participate. It is so easy to manipulate these gatherings. It's not like an ecumenical council where it truly is every bishop in the world. So you have some actual debate and some actual pushback from more conservative and traditional minds. You can manipulate these synods very easily.
Yes. One of the things that we forgot to mention on Cardinal Martini, he is the Godfather Don of the St. Gallen Mafia. He's sort of the liberal spiritual mind of liberal European Catholic clergy. He's also a Jesuit.
Yes.
We need to mention that. He's a Jesuit. He died in 2012. And what happened in 2013? Well, 2012, we had sort of this big investigation. Well, 2010 to 2012, the big investigation of which Archbishop Vigano was a part of.
Yep.
Sort of the anxiety and the papal leaks that happened all throughout 2012. Cardinal Martini dies in, I believe, the summer of 2012. And then we have a papal resignation, a conclave, Pope Francis. And we know from the likes of ex-Cardinal McCarrick, and we know from Cardinal Daniels that there was this group with an affiliation with meeting in St. Gallen, Switzerland. When we say St. Gallen Mafia, we mean St. Gallen, Switzerland. That was the hub. That was the meeting place. And I've explained in my book, Infiltration, why it has occult origins and histories in the 1900s in that area. But he's a Jesuit. And in a way, his mind is downloaded into that of Francis.
Yes. Yes. I think some people even refer to him as the ante-pope, not meaning anti like against pope, but before the prototype for Francis. ANTE.
Yeah. Yeah, people need, we talk about Bugnini a lot. He's the one who, designed the Novus Ordo and rewrote all the liturgies. But I really think we traditional Catholics, we need to also start making ourselves familiar with Cardinal Martini. Because when it comes to the theoretical elements in the implementation of these liberal ideas, especially under Francis, it comes from Cardinal Martini.
Actually, my predecessor at Catholic Family News, John Venari, God rest his soul, yes, he actually very early on in the pontificate of Francis wrote a dynamite article called the Martini Pope. Mm-hmm. So he was very early on was catching on. There's a significant connection here between Cardinal Martini and Cardinal Bergoglio.